mining, through mining, through rehab, and then back into what you see it as today. We come to the site a long time before we even put the first shovel in the ground, and we do a full mining assessment, which includes flora, fauna studies, full cultural studies, including from what we call cradle to grave. So we do a full assessment of mining as well as into rehab. So it's the full process of not just mining the ore, but actually put it back to a full rehab state at the start. So the flora and fauna studies, we identify the native vegetation species that are local to this area, so Providence Creek area, and we actually seed collect and harvest those seeds prior to mining. We do come through and we strip the topsoil, which is the organic layer which holds all the seed and all the organic layer, and we'll stockpile that into stockpiles ready for rehab at a later date. The next layer is in the subsoil, so the subsoil is a bit more organic rich layer as well rather than the overburden, and we'll stockpile that to subsoil stockpiles. And the next is the overburden, so that's the layer of material above the ore that doesn't have the quite percentage of grade that we require for mining, and that's stockpiled into overburden stockpiles. And once all that's stripped is when the mining starts of the heavy mineral content that we want. When we came through, did our pre-mining assessment, we identified a species of plants in our wetland that we weren't quite confident, or there's no real evidence of propagating or success from growing from seed. So the idea was that we actually would maintain this species of plant through mining in what we call a nursery area. So we actually had to relocate this wetlands to an area up the scarp and maintain it for 11 years. So that included reticulation, maintaining the soil profile at a moisture that would be successful for a wetland species, as well as the challenges of having to move a wetland species from an area where it's essentially got its feet wet for 12 months of the year in a groundwater table that's sustaining that wetland, to an area where we've had to maintain that water for the last 11 years essentially. So with the help of a lot of local contractors, we actually fabricated some specialised equipment to essentially, almost like a spatula bucket attachment. We can slide this attachment underneath the wetland, maintain all that organic layer underneath the wetland species, and pick that all up in one bit, put onto a specialised flatbed truck, which we also fabricated from a local mining contractor down here in the southwest, that would carefully place that wetland parcels into an area where we can maintain it. So you're maintaining that whole organic layer underneath the wetland species as well, where it can better chance of survival for 11 years of the project. Rehab's where the fun begins on this site. So again, part of the pre-mining assessment, we identified the layers of what we call the leadable clays, which was actually maintaining that wetland species. So you can imagine the water cable coming through off the scarp. It was hitting this clay layer and welling up to the surface. So as part of that rehab process, we've actually had to rebuild that profile in the underground layers, including sort of leadable clays, overburden subsoil, topsoil, to make sure that water coming off the scarp has actually hit that layer and brought up to the surface where it could be back to what it was before. This is a site that I think Iluka is quite proud of, because it's been a collaboration between a number of departments for the last, like you said, for the last decade, all the way through from pre-mining for our environmental teams up in Perth, our community relations team, all the way through into the mining team, which came through and did the mining obviously, and our rehab team, which has come through, and just the collaboration on this site has been a success from the start, and it's been, I think, like I said, one of those sites that Iluka's been quite proud of. So for myself personally, to see a site come from a land where it's been farmland, like quite productive farmland and native vegetation, as well as the central wetlands, through mining, and then back to essentially the productivity's back what we had pre-mining as well. So we're seeing some great successes in our native vegetation as well as the wetlands, like we talked about, and but the farmland, as you can see, it's something to be proud of as well. To go through the mining process and get kick all the goals that we did for this site, and then to see it back to what it is now is quite an achievement and quite a thing that we're actually proud of.